25-year-old is accused of killing his mother and little brother in Wilson days after being released from prison. Today, we learn more about the victims, identified as Dana Jenkins and her son, Darren.
You open your front door to relief, not fear. You imagine a fresh start, not flashing lights. 6 days after a homecoming, a quiet house on Snowden Drive is ringed with tape. A neighborhood stands still, and 2 members of the same family are gone. The most devastating question lands like a whisper you don't want to hear. How does a celebration turn into a tragedy in less than a week? Before we get into this, if you appreciate careful, respectful storytelling that puts facts and people first, you're in the right place. You're watching True Crime Watch. Take a second to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a case that matters. Now 8 words typed with joy mark the beginning of this story. My baby is home. Lord, I thank you. Those words were posted publicly and filled with the energy of hope. They signaled a mother's belief in second chances, in tomorrow being gentler than yesterday. Friends and family celebrated along with her. For a moment, it felt like gravity had lifted. That's important, because what follows will test everything you think about family, redemption, and the boundaries of love. Let's step back carefully. We're going to move slowly and deliberately, because when a story collapses this quickly, every small detail becomes a hinge. At the center is a mother widely described as warm, faithful, and dependable, someone who worked hard and showed up for people. The kind of neighbor who remembers your birthday and the kind of parent who keeps the lights on emotionally as much as practically. Alongside her was a teenage son, bright, involved in school and church, well-liked, the sort of kid teachers talk about with pride. Their days looked ordinary in the best way. Routines, rides, laughter in small moments, plans for the next season of life. If you've ever stood in a gym after a school event or lingered in a church lobby after a service, you know the glow of that ordinariness. Then there's the return, the older son coming home after time away. Homecomings are complicated. They carry hope, yes, but also the delicate work of rebuilding trust and rhythm. If you've ever welcomed someone back after a long absence, you know the mix, the hugs and the quiet questions, the joy and the watchfulness. Family and neighbors noticed that something felt off. It's hard to describe off. It's posture, it's packing. It's the way eyes skim a room, the way words land oddly or don't land at all. People told themselves what people always tell themselves: give it time. Let home do its healing work. Let love be enough. In those brief days, the household tried to exhale, favorite foods, familiar spaces, routines restitched. But discomfort grew at the margins. Restless nights, uneasy silences, long stares through windows where there isn't much to see. You know that feeling when your gut says something's wrong and your heart says don't be unkind. That's the tension that settled over the house, caution wrestling with compassion. And here's a question for you. Have you ever ignored a gut feeling because you didn't want to make waves? Tell me in the comments if you've been there, because what happens next is exactly why that tension matters. On a Monday evening, just before night takes full hold, a call brings officers to a single-story home on a quiet Wilson Street. There's no shattered window in the yard, no burning smell, no crowd crying out. From the outside, it looks like ordinary life. A car in the driveway, a porch light on. But the silence isn't normal, and doors that should open won't. Inside, the officers make a discovery that stops time for a family, a school, and a church community. 2 lives, central to so many others, are lost. We are not going to be graphic. We don't need to be. What matters is the gravity, not the gore. What matters is that the loss is immediate, total, and irreversible. The kind of loss that echoes through hallways and classrooms, that fills a sanctuary with stunned quiet. The kind of loss that asks, how did love get us here? Within hours, an arrest is made. It is swift. The person taken into custody is known to the victims, very known. That fact alone reframes everything. A homecoming is now evidence. A week of uneasy sleep becomes a timeline. Those 8 hopeful words become the first line in a story that people across a city will replay, trying to find the moment where fate could have bent differently. Pause for a second and consider how fast 6 days pass, less than a school week, a handful of dinners, a short stack of mornings. When people talk about this case, they keep repeating the number, 6. It's the distance between a thankful post and a vigil. It's the space between laughing in a kitchen and whispering on a street lit by police lights. It's the reason this story sits in your chest. In the immediate aftermath, the circles of grief spread quickly. Friends post photos and prayers. Teachers set out tissues and adjust lesson plans because one of the chairs in their room will stay empty. At church, the people who watched a teenager run the media booth or play music find themselves staring at a photo on a table. The words people use are simple, because simple words are all that make sense when you've lost your breath. Kind, respectful, bright, loved. There is a difference between a crime that shocks and a crime that wounds. This one does both. Let's talk about the mother again, because it's easy to lose the person inside the headline. She was a constant. She believed in showing up in faith with hands and feet. The kind of person who would drive you to an appointment or drop off a meal without making it a big deal. She was hopeful in a very specific way, not naive, just committed to the idea that people can change and families can heal. That belief is beautiful and vulnerable. When we believe in each other, we lower our guard. That's how trust works. We tell ourselves that time and love and structure can pull someone back toward the light. Most of the time, that isn't just optimistic, it's right. Sometimes, though, the math doesn't balance. And when it doesn't, the cost can be unspeakable. What about the older brother returning home? You'll hear about previous mistakes, time in custody, a record that suggests volatility. You'll hear relatives describe behavior that didn't add up, restlessness, distance, a certain fixed stare. Noticing a red flag is one thing. Saying it out loud is another. Families are careful with each other, especially during reunions that are supposed to mend old breaks. No one wants to be the person who names a storm while the banner still says, "Welcome home." Maybe you've stood in that space yourself, where love asks for patience and your instincts ask for caution. If you have, share your thoughts below. What would you have done? By the end of that Monday, police have the older son in custody. Charges follow. The facts released publicly are measured and spare. The essential truths are clear enough. 2 lives lost inside the home, a family shattered, a community grieving, an arrest that closes one door and opens another. Because a case like this isn't just about what happened, it's about how it happened and why. And those answers are never simple. Imagine standing in a house where everything looks exactly as it did a week ago, furniture perfectly in place, a welcome banner still taped to the wall, the clock ticking at a steady rhythm. But beneath that surface of normalcy, every object now holds a question. Every shadow feels like a clue. This was no longer a home. It had become evidence. When investigators stepped across the threshold of the Jenkins residence, they didn't see chaos from the outside. There were no shattered windows, no signs of forced entry. That alone told them something critical. Whoever did this was let inside. Trust lived here, and that trust had been fatally misplaced. From this moment on, detectives weren't looking for a mystery stranger. They were reconstructing a betrayal. But to fully understand what led to that moment, we need to go back, not to the night of the crime, but to the quiet, subtle unraveling that began the moment Dana Jenkins walked through that front door. Day 1, the homecoming. The celebration was genuine. There were smiles, hugs, hopeful words about second chances. Dana wasn't acting out of denial, she was acting out of love. If you've ever prayed for someone you care about to heal, to change, you understand that moment. Friends later said she talked about restoration and new beginnings. She had already forgiven him. In her heart, this was the miraculous return of the prodigal son. But what Dana didn't know was this. Darienne's release from prison had not been granted due to good behavior or rehabilitation. It was procedural, automatic. Reports indicate he had been denied parole multiple times. This wasn't a man coming home renewed. This was a storm coming through the front door. Day 2, the unease begins. Family members noticed it in silence. The way his eyes seemed unfocused, the way he stood in the hallway at night when everyone else was asleep. He barely spoke. When asked how he was doing, he responded with short answers, more like a reflex than an expression. Observers recalled he seemed hyper-aware, watching everyone as though he was studying the movements inside the house. Where others saw home, he seemed to see a battleground. Behavioral psychologists say that in post-release adjustment, signs like this, withdrawal, packing, fixation, can be early signals of a deteriorating mental state, but families often excuse it as adjusting. They whisper their concerns to each other, but no one wants to be the one to shatter hope. Day 3, the shift. There is a moment, often in hindsight, that becomes the turning point. For Dana's family, it was when she gave Darien money, believing he wanted to get clothing, toiletries, things to get back on his feet. She didn't hesitate, she trusted him. Receipts obtained later by investigators confirmed the purchases that followed: duct tape, bleach, a hunting knife. That shopping list wouldn't be known until after everything was over. At the time, no one questioned where the money went. That's what mothers do. They provide. They believe. Reports would later reveal that Darien had been spending time alone in the house for long stretches, appearing deep in thought. Relatives described it as packing like he was on a countdown. One even mentioned seeing him staring into space, motionless, for minutes at a time. They knew something was wrong. But what do you do when the danger is someone you love? Day 4, the family begins to worry. People started avoiding eye contact with him. They whispered, but quietly, always out of Dana's earshot. Everyone loved her so much that they chose her peace over their own instincts. One relative reflected later that she felt it in her soul that something was coming. But emotions in families are powerful forces. Hope can silence fear. Darien's behavior escalated. He stopped eating meals with the family. He'd stand outside in the yard, staring at the sky. At night, they heard doors opening and closing, even when no one was leaving. One family member said his presence felt like a pressure in the room. Still, no one confronted him, because you don't accuse someone on the basis of a feeling. But feelings are often the earliest warnings. Day 5, investigation now looks backward. Investigators quickly pulled Darien's records, prison behavior reports, parole hearing statements, psychological assessments. The findings painted a picture far different from the hopeful reunion posted on social media. Darien's record showed violent infractions, threats made to staff, and refusal to participate in rehabilitation programs. He had been written up multiple times for malicious conduct. This was not a man quietly returning home to start over. This was someone entering society with unresolved anger, untreated trauma, and no structured supervision to ensure safe re-entry. In fact, investigators learned that Darien had not yet reported to his assigned post-release officer at all in the week following his release. 6 days passed, and no check-in occurred. That failure in oversight would become a major point of public outrage. But even that wasn't the most chilling discovery. Day 6, the final day before everything changed. Let's stop here, because what investigators learned about Darien's mindset was not from witnesses, not from surveillance footage, but from something far more personal: his digital footprint. In the hours before the crime, Darien's search history and phone activity showed behavior that detectives would later call indicative of planning and intent. This wasn't a spontaneous break or sudden outburst. Steps were taken, preparations were made, and they appeared to be directed not at strangers, but at the very people who had welcomed him home. In the early evening, neighbors reported hearing nothing. No arguing, no shouting, just silence. It was the kind of stillness that makes what happened next even more difficult to comprehend. The 911 call came in at approximately 5:30 p.m. It was classified as an unknown trouble call. The dispatcher couldn't immediately determine the nature of the emergency, but the tone in the background was enough. Something was very, very wrong. By the time officers arrived, the outcome was irreversible. It was inside that house that everything investigators had been piecing together suddenly crystallized. The purchases, the silence, the packing, the detachment, the look in his eyes that family members said they couldn't shake. All of it pointed to one stunning conclusion. This was not a moment of madness. This was intentional. And then, one more discovery would change everything again. The insurance policy. Buried in paperwork found during the investigation was a life insurance policy, a policy listing one primary beneficiary. It wasn't the younger son. It wasn't a spouse. It wasn't another family member. It was Darienne. This revelation sent shockwaves not just through investigators, but through the community. Because if this financial detail was connected to the crime, if greed or resentment had merged with pre-existing instability, then what happened in that house wasn't only an act of violence. It was betrayal at the deepest level. But was money the motive? Or was it something darker? Years of bitterness, jealousy toward his younger brother, resentment at his mother for believing in him but not rescuing him from accountability. The moment Dana Jenkins entered the courtroom, the atmosphere shifted. No emotion, no remorse, just silence. Prosecutors laid out a clear narrative. This was not confusion, not a mental break. It was planned. The purchases, the isolation, the timing, and most damning of all, the life insurance policy naming him as beneficiary. Investigators testified that Darienne had searched financial terms in the days leading up to the murders. They revealed his behavior in prison, violent incidents, parole denials, and no sign of rehabilitation. What shocked the courtroom most was how calculated it all appeared. The prosecution argued that he viewed his own family not with love, but as leverage. The defense attempted to introduce mental instability, but there was no official diagnosis sufficient to meet legal standards. No insanity plea. No mitigating factors strong enough to outweigh the evidence. This wasn't confusion, it was choice. When the verdict was read, guilty on both counts of first-degree murder, the courtroom didn't breathe. The sentence, life in prison without the possibility of parole. The community released a sigh that wasn't relief, it was grief. Because no outcome could undo what happened in that house. What remained was the question everyone still wrestles with. How can love and danger live under the same roof? Dana believed in redemption. She believed in second chances. But belief without boundaries left her vulnerable to someone she trusted most. This case isn't just about one family. It's about the silent warning signs we ignore. It's about the systems that release people without accountability. It's about what happens when hope blinds us to risk. Mother and son were laid to rest side by side. Two lives remembered for light. One life now defined by darkness. And the final truth settles in. Sometimes the greatest threat isn't a stranger in the shadows. It's the danger you welcome home. If this case left you with questions, I want to hear your thoughts. Should families be warned when someone with a violent history is released? Could this have been prevented? Let's talk about it in the comments. You've been watching True Crime Watch HD. If you believe in telling stories that matter, hit subscribe, turn on notifications, and share this video so their story is never forgotten. Stay safe, trust your instincts, and remember, protection begins with awareness.